Hey everybody, it's Erica. I'm making a video today about trauma and redefining trauma and challenging us to recognize that trauma and PTSD are not limited to what we have been taught it is, if you will. I'm going to challenge that all of us are holding on to trauma to some way, shape, or form, that all of us have been traumatized at some point, and that PTSD is not just for war veterans and for people who have experienced really awful traumatic experiences like rape or violence or war, things like that, which, by the way, are completely awful and terrible and need to be addressed. What I'm speaking to today is the phenomenon of trauma in our everyday lives and how that might manifest, and that there's hope that we can address it and treat it with things like theta healing that I do. So trauma, as defined by the dictionary, is a deeply distressing or disturbing experience. Now, I spent the first 30 years of my life thinking, I'm not traumatized, I wasn't abused, I wasn't in war, I was never raped, and so I have a pretty hunky-dory, I think, and in many ways I do, and I'm very grateful that I didn't experience those things. However, what I started to wake up to was that I was actually very traumatized, and that a lot of my decisions in my life were based around fear and avoiding those traumas I experienced at a young age again. And these are traumas that involved avoiding rejection and avoiding emotional abuse. I experienced bullying growing up from certain people in my school and was picked on and teased, and I didn't really reconcile that until recently and look back and I'm just like, oh my goodness, I totally was bullied. And not to be like poor me, it's just the trap I got myself into, that a lot of us get ourselves into, was minimizing my own pain and not calling out trauma for what it was, and that I was fine, and not dealing with it. So I had been holding on to this trauma and this hurt for the first 30 years of my life, and only recently came to call it out for what it was, first of all, saying, hey, that was actually a really painful experience for me, and that really did affect me, actually. So, you know, being honest with myself and bringing it to light, and then finding an avenue to be able to let go of it and not hold on to it, which I was able to do with theta healing, and be able to release that trauma from my being and release that fear of rejection from my being as well, that I don't have, I'm not holding on to that anymore. I no longer fear being rejected. Like, yes, rejection isn't the best. Like, I don't go seeking it out, but at the same time, if there is rejection anymore, I don't internalize it or think, oh gosh, like something I did was wrong or what have you. It's not like that at all. So trauma and PTSD, I am going to argue that all of us are holding on to some PTSD or some trauma in some way, shape, or form. Every single one of us. All of us have experienced a deeply disturbing or distressing event. All of us have experienced pain. All of us have experienced loss. And in some ways, we have developed mechanisms subconsciously to avoid them again and to avoid the pain and the hurt. And one of the biggest things I see is that we call it something different, or we minimize it. Like, well, somebody out there got raped, so what happened to me, like, it doesn't matter. And I really want to challenge us on that we do not get stuck in that trap, because I did for the longest time. Like, I'm grateful that it wasn't that bad, and we can find gratitude in that, but that we don't minimize our own pain and our own story and our own experience in that. So that is what I have to say about trauma, is that it can really go deep. It can really affect us in our everyday lives and into our adult life. And I think for people in the nowadays, one of the biggest traumas we're holding on to is the trauma of rejection and the trauma of not belonging, and trying to find our way out of that so we can live more free, happy, healthy lives. And so I work a lot with trauma and releasing trauma and fear, and having amazing results with my clients with that. I've had amazing healing in that myself. And so I invite all of you to think about trauma and to think about how you might be holding on to it, or what happened to you that is no longer serving you to hold on to it. So go to my website, www.innerfirewellnessnc.com, and you may call me or message me if you're interested in theta healing or wholeness coaching to get out of these patterns and cycles or things you're holding on to. And I'm just here to help you guys out in whatever way you feel you need it. So have a great week. We'll talk to you soon. Enjoy.